Yes, hello and welcome everyone to today's workshop hosted by TLT, Tomorrow's Leaders Today. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to developing youth leaders through education, collaboration, and mentorship with community and business leaders, all for the collective benefit of both the students and their community. Joining us today, we have our president, Elaine, myself, Leticia. I act as a youth advisory committee secretary, and we're excited to have Dr. Donnie Wendt with us, who'll be leading an engaging session on cybersecurity, a crucial skill in today's digital world. And additionally, we're also offering internship opportunities with TLT, where you can apply what you learn, gain hand-on experience in cybersecurity and leadership. And you can also develop your skills. If you're interested, please complete the exit survey at the end of the workshop. Now, to break the ice, I'm going to do a little trivia quiz on cybersecurity, but don't worry, it's just for fun, just to break the ice. Let me share that slide now. For today's agenda, we'll have an introduction to Dr. Wendt, and we've already introduced myself and Elaine. So we're going to do this icebreaker. I'm going to have a little overview about TLT in the workshop. We'll discuss career paths in cybersecurity and the required skills to get into this industry. We'll also discuss AI within cybersecurity. And at the end, we'll have any questions or answers, if any of you have any, and also internship opportunities with TLT. So the first question is, what is phishing? You guys can place your answers in the chat, and then we can do this answer at the end. Yes, I see most of you put A. That is the correct answer. Attempting to acquire sensitive information by disguising as a trustworthy entity. Good job. What does the term ransomware mean? Please put your answers in the chat. Yes, you guys are right. It is C, your program that demands payments in exchange for restoring access to your files or the system. Good job. Now we'll move over to Dr. Wentz, let him introduce himself and get started with the workshop.
Hey, hello, everybody. I'm Donnie Wendt, and I was really honored when Elaine reached out to me to join you guys and have this workshop on cybersecurity. I am both cybersecurity and AI professional. Also authored a book that came out just in, well, it was December, January timeframe around cybersecurity trinity, how we can use AI, automation, and active defenses in combination to improve our cybersecurity. I work as what we call a virtual chief AI officer for White Glove AI. And what that means is I work for their clients. I work as a chief AI officer for their clients to try to ensure that they adopt AI within their business processes safely and securely. I also teach as an adjunct professor in a master's program in cybersecurity. One class dealing with AI and cybersecurity, and the other on security operations. So I've been at this quite some time before cybersecurity even existed. I was a software developer when I first got started, and now I've seen so many changes to this industry, but I think the changes I've seen pale in comparison to what we're going to be seeing. And I know we'll get into some of that as we go through the agenda. But again, I'm honored to be here. Hope you all have some questions, and we'll try to answer those. And as far as where we're joining from, I'm actually joining from Missouri, a small town called Warrenton in Missouri. So uh, glad to be here, and I guess we'll go ahead and get started, Letitia.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Let's get started with if you could tell us what career paths are in cybersecurity.
Right. One of the really great things about cybersecurity, and I see this a lot in my teaching in the master's program as well as with undergrads, is that there is no one career in cybersecurity. It spans so many different topics, and it also it it touches every industry out there. So sometimes we'll see people coming into cybersecurity from that traditional cybersecurity role, say in a security operations center and doing that. But a lot of it is ones coming from different business units, different business organizations, bringing that knowledge in because we need to secure their applications. So it can run, when we start talking about cybersecurity careers, that the traditional, yes, working in a security operations center, dealing with all those alerts and that are coming in and trying to stop the bad guys while they're attacking us. But it spans such a great field. You also have your ones looking at from a business process perspective, the risk management side of it. How do we reduce or mitigate the risk involved in our business from a cybersecurity perspective? You have many of them coming at it from a development side as well. So we also talk about application security and that, networking. So it may be focused really on network security. And now what we're and I'm anxious when we get to that section, I can talk about it quite a bit. But we're also, because of the uh, use of AI, a lot of new careers starting around AI security and securing AI. So, and that's really where a lot of my background and focus has been recently. But I've seen them come from many different fields. One thing that's interesting I've noticed, I don't know if any of you are musicians, but I will tell you this field is full of musicians. I mean, it's everywhere I go. It seems like the whole team. They play guitar, they play drums, they play something. There seems to be a lot of musicians in this field. So if you like music, I guess you like cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I did not know that. Now, do you need a college degree or can you get into cybersecurity through certifications?
Right. Yeah. And there's many paths to cybersecurity. I mean, yes, you have the traditional coming through a college degree and joining that way. There's also a lot of apprentice programs out there as well. I know here in where I live out in St. Louis, we have an apprenticeship program where a lot of the large companies around here sponsor the apprenticeship program, and it'll be a nonprofit that takes them through their free of charge, basically going through their initial security certifications and getting those. And then once they complete, they get an apprenticeship with one of the sponsoring organizations. So we see apprenticeship really driving a lot coming into this industry as well. We have, for instance, I've seen a lot of military apprenticeships where they're hiring them in, but we've seen cybersecurity is such a need, and we also have found that oftentimes the skill sets in that are coming not necessarily from the traditional path, and a lot of the forward thinking companies are looking at many different paths to get them in, whether that's through uh, things like a sponsored apprenticeship program, or a lot of times you'll see people coming from different fields entirely, right? That are just interested in cybersecurity. Um, so there is no one path to it. I will say, I certainly did not get into IT and all that by getting a degree first. Sure, I have them now, but I started as a software developer in the Marine Corps, and through my career have gone and completed my education while working full time all the time. So yeah, there's all kinds of paths. I would say uh, there's also, I think we'll get into some of there's a lot of different ways you can get the training and get experience out, either to complement what you're doing in school if you're currently going to school, or in place of that if you need to. So if you go out there, there's quite a few, and I can send out a list of some of them. But for instance, there's edx.org has a lot of free online classes. Um, Oftentimes through organizations like major universities and that, where the classes are free if you just want to take them. If you want to get a certification, they normally, $20, $50 or whatever for the certification path. Uh, but there's also ones like the government has through uh, the CISA, Cyber Infrastructure Security, what CISA. Um, CISA.gov has some free training, and I know the European Council, ecouncil.org. So if you go out there and look, there's a lot of sources where you can get that training. Another great way to like supplement, especially if you're going to say you're going to university, and to try to supplement that with some real hands-on sort of experience that you can show, is getting involved in things like the hackathons, or joining those, getting into these competitions. Um, that shows your interest in it, as well as you gain a lot of skills that way. So yeah, there's all kinds of paths. There's no one path into this industry.
Okay, good to know.
Great information.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what kind of companies hire cybersecurity professionals?
What kind of companies? Well, that's what's interesting, because cybersecurity is important across most industries. We see a wide array of companies that are looking for cybersecurity professionals. Of course, you have those companies focused on cybersecurity. So all your like cybersecurity vendors and your large technology companies, they normally do. But also, if there's a particular field you're interested in, leverage that. Like, of course, the financial services industry, cybersecurity's been at the forefront in that industry for years. That's actually where I spent 20 years at MasterCard as a cybersecurity researcher and a principal cybersecurity researcher before I left. I retired from there early last year. But also like healthcare, they definitely need it, and I see, but the ones that you first think of, the technology, the financial, the healthcare, state and local governments, but also, some of them are, if your passion is, say, around agriculture, there's any field you can think of, there's an applicability. One of my favorite students I had was actually coming from an agriculture background and got into cybersecurity because she had seen all this smart farming coming into agriculture, where they were using, you know, IT, that they were using all these different AI and that to basically enhance crop production, take care of the minerals in the soil, the watering, and all of that. Well, that also then, of course, opens it up to attacks. So she came at it she really didn't have much of a cybersecurity background, but had a phenomenal background in agriculture. And she saw the need there. So you can think about just about any industry, there's there's a need for it. Now, what we've seen kind of over the last several years, a lot of let's say the smaller to mid-sized organizations moving more to a managed service provider sort of solution where they have a third party managing one of the big ones, say, one of the big cybersecurity vendors or that managing their cybersecurity, right? So in that case, a lot of the entry level, say hands on, working in the SOC sort of activities are no longer in those small to medium sized companies, but in the managed service providers. However, those companies need somebody to manage and hold the MSSPs or managed security service providers accountable. So even there's still a use. But I would say, yeah, if there's one of my friends was, he was the chief information security officer for the Philadelphia Eagles. I know that's not that's probably for Dallas. That's probably the wrong team, but hey, uh, he was a lifelong football fan, and he had worked in statistics and that. So he got into it working, doing statistical analysis and that, and eventually got into security with the Eagles. So sometimes it's also, maybe it's not directly going straight into cybersecurity. It may be going in there and learning that business. So serving in some sort of analysis role in that then gives you the ability to move over into cybersecurity because now you have the knowledge of how their business and systems operate. So yeah, I can't think of too many fields where they're not looking for cybersecurity people.
Thank you. That's good information to know. Now, I know you previously mentioned there are apprenticeships.
Right.
Are there any other entry-level jobs that are available for someone that's just starting out?
Oh yeah. So a lot of times when you look at entry level in the cybersecurity, um, that'll typically be working like in the what we call the security operations center, at the first level support, typically a security operations center. So that's where all the alerts come in when someone's trying to hack in your system, right? And you're trying to triage those, figure out what's going on. Um, and it's normally structured in most organizations with multiple tiers. So tier one is entry level, typically dealing with fundamental sort of attacks, getting mentorship, highly guided going through that. But then they go up to tier two, typically tier three. So it provides a good progression as you go in. So that's a lot of times where people get started, but also entry level analyst positions are often a good introduction into cybersecurity as well. Working around, especially if you're interested in a particular business technology or that, working as an analyst in that organization. Uh, your teams with, say, risk management will typically have uh, multiple tiers as far, again, multiple levels. So they may bring in junior level people to help with some of the day-to-day work of the risk management, tracking those risks, uh, which prepares them to move up into the true risk management where you're identifying and creating mitigation plans and that. So really most areas, even like in vulnerability management, that they'll have like entry level positions. So most of them have it, but what unfortunately, I've gone out there and seen some of these job postings, and I'll say it's an entry level position, and then they'll have on the requirements all these different certifications, 5 years experience. That's not entry level if that's what you're asking for, right? Don't let that dissuade you. Sometimes when I was sometimes when they put the postings out, the HR department and the cybersecurity department aren't communicating really well. Um, so if it's something that you really have an interest in, look at what the tasks are in that job, not necessarily at what it's saying the qualifications are. And if that's something that truly interests you, go ahead and apply for it. And I also am a big proponent of trying to find ways to make your application stand out, because I will tell you that, like, when I'm looking at I go out and on a job posting on LinkedIn, and within a couple hours, it'll show over 100 people have applied. Um, Nobody has taken the time to look through hundreds of resumes that are coming in for every position. Most of these organizations are leveraging some sort of AI at the front end to screen those applications and, narrow it down to something a human can then look at and narrow down further. So it's really trying to craft, do not have, if you're trying to get into one of these entry level positions, do not have one resume. You have one resume customized for the position you're applying for. Try
That's
to,
all great information.
yes, because,
So important.
oh yeah. And it's, uh, if you know, you know, any way that you can tie directly to what the requirements are for that position and that in your resume, because that's what the AI is going to do. You've got to get through that first level screening before you can talk to a human. And then you can tell them how great you are and all this passion you have for the industry. But it's getting to that first level a lot of times is difficult. But don't get discouraged. That, like I say, these companies are getting hundreds of them. You just go out on LinkedIn, pick up look at a few of the jobs, and you'll normally see over 100 people have applied. That's what it'll say, And so that's kind of what's going on there. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways to get in. The best way is if you know somebody there, then you can get past that first level screening. You can get your resume in front of somebody to look at. The other thing, a great way is networking. So how do you do that? I'm sure most of you are around the Dallas area. I'm sure they have like user groups, that they have security interest groups and that meet. Join those. That's where you're going to build your network. So like here in St. Louis, I'm a member of several different cybersecurity groups that meet here. Typically some of them are rather informal. Some of them have, meetings every month with planned agendas, and they'll have guest speakers. But getting in there is how you make the network with the people that matter in your area, the people that are going to hire you, right? And it's getting out there, no matter how much of that, that AIs in between these job applications and all that, the quickest way in there, the best way in there is still through human contact, building that network. So get out, join those security groups, participate in hackathons, anything you can do to build that network.
Great. Could you tell us what some technical and soft skills are important for cybersecurity?
Okay, so well, it's interesting when we talk about technical skills. Back when I got started in cybersecurity, it was commonly understood that the basics were uh, operating system, networking, and application. You needed to understand those three things, and from there you could build on any aspect of cybersecurity. But I will tell you now, AI is the new fourth component of that basket of essentials. Uh, so anywhere you can build up from a technical skills, and there's a lot of different certifications and that'll go through and show that you have that. But from a technical skills, you're typically looking at an understanding of networking, how networking works. Um, Now you are not going to need to know it at, say, a network engineer level, but just understanding the concepts of networking, how that interacts. Operating systems, your major operating systems have knowledge of those, like Windows, Linux, and the various operating systems. And then an understanding of secure software development, what that means, that life cycle. Those components underlie a lot of cybersecurity. Um, Now, typically you're not going to have somebody that's an expert in all of those. So if there's one area that interests you the most, pursue that. But also make sure you have a basic understanding of the others. From
Okay.
a soft skills perspective, I think it's same in most industries today. Communication, just being able to communicate effectively with both, from the business side of it, because if you don't one thing that's going to set you apart as a cybersecurity professional entering it is your understanding and ability to communicate about the business side. Cybersecurity is there to enable the business to meet its objectives, right? Safely and securely. It's not about creating the most secure environment we possibly can. It's about enabling the business to perform its objectives safely and securely as practical. So, negotiation skills, especially as you start moving up in cybersecurity, negotiation skills are paramount because you're going to be making decisions, you're going to be involved in decisions where you're balancing business efficiency and operations with security. And a lot of times that takes a lot of negotiation. So it's like communication, negotiation, a lot of the human skills there.
You're right. Thank you. Could you also tell me some free online courses or certifications for beginners?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned a few of those earlier. But there's quite a few of them out there. Ones that I'm familiar with that I've used in the past, uh, of- where you can get a wide range is one called edX. It's edx.org. Because yes, that's a great one. They have programs spanning almost every facet of cybersecurity as well as every level. So from beginner level, intermediate, and on up. And a lot of them, like one that I took personally in there was one on um, developing basically machine learning development with R, uh, right? That programming language that was uh, put out by Harvard so a division of Harvard that does that, and it was totally free, and it was great training, very detailed. Now, it like in that one, you could either audit it for free or you could pay. I think it was like $35 at the start. If you paid that, then you would get a certification to show that you completed it. But they have a lot of programs like that all through edX. So it's kind of a way into many different companies, many different organizations training. So I like to use that as a good starting point. Uh, One I was looking at today was actually through, I think it's Purdue Northwestern had pnw.edu. They have some free online cybersecurity training. Uh, so yes, leverage those. Now, most of the certifications, when you start talking about certifications like the CompTIA and the Security Plus and that, the certifications aren't free, right? You normally have to pay for those unless you're going through one of these apprenticeship programs, nonprofits, and that where they're essentially paying for the certification. But for most of those beginner level certifications, they're not extremely expensive. Most of them are reasonable from that perspective. Uh, but yeah, I would look at eh, leverage all the free online training, especially if you get ones that have those certifications from a recognized organization. That helps. It shows that one that you're very interested in and you are dedicated to improving yourself and your career. Uh, I I know at when I worked at MasterCard, a lot of us use EDX. There was one called Coursera too. I don't know if they had free training or not, but that was just one that we used a lot there. But yeah, look out there. There's all kinds of them. But I would say just as a edX is a good one to just kind of get out there and see the full gamut of what's available.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. Now, with the rise of AI, what specific challenges do cybersecurity professionals face in terms of threat detection, prevention, and response?
Oh my. It's that when I think about like AI and cybersecurity, it's fundamentally changing what we do and how we do it. Uh, and it's really a three-prong perspective. What I mean by that, we have AI embedded within our cybersecurity tools to help us detect threats and respond to threats. We have adversaries using AI to improve their attacks, especially around social engineering. And then the third prong of that is all the business, cybersecurity, we're there to protect the business applications. And all those business applications are now incorporating and leveraging AI. So that it impacts every aspect of security. When we talk about like the new threats, so if we're using AI in our systems, that opens up new threat vectors that we didn't have to worry about before. Think of things like data poisoning, where an attacker is manipulating the data used to train our models. Or if we're having, say, AI determine that something's fraudulent or valid, the attacker crafting samples that will be misclassified, fraudulent transactions that our AI is going to say are valid, right? So, and the from that perspective, that opens up a lot of new threat vectors on our side as far as within our applications. And then when we look at it from the threat actor side, it's giving them a lot new, maybe not so many new novel attacks, but improving their attacks and and increasing the speed of those attacks. When we think about things like social engineering is a good example. Phishing. I know you had that as your first question. Years ago, well, not that many years ago, just a couple years ago, most cybersecurity awareness training, tried to teach users to look for like misspellings, bad grammar. That's a thing of the past when our threat actors can leverage these large language models, things like ChatGPT and that, to craft very well written phishing emails, right? So now that takes it away from putting it on a user to try to recognize these misspellings and all of that, to more of a, we have to use AI to to look for uh, characteristics within that email of a threat attack. So our threat actors are using it consistently, especially around things like our social engineering attacks, which is still the easiest method for an attacker to get into our systems is through a human via social engineering. And that's where we see a lot of the AI being used, is to target humans with social engineering. It's also used by threat actors to make quickly make changes to malware, so that any sort of malware detection that had recognized it in the past is not going to recognize. So just create constant new variants. Um, that's another area we're seeing it used by threat actors. But I would say right now, a lot of the increase of AI from the threat side is around that social engineering aspect, and a lot of automation, just to speed these attacks up. Now, the on the good side, most of our cybersecurity tools, the vast majority of them are leveraging AI to improve our detection and response, right? So noticing things that a human analyst may not notice in a threat attack, um, and being able to also do that initial kind of evaluation and triage, m- m- even to the point like sometimes for like common sort of attacks, go ahead and respond. But when we start getting complex, being able to pull together all that information, assimilate it in front of an analyst, and provide recommendations on what to do, right? Because depending upon the risk involved, the risk of harm in our response, we will want to have a human analyst reviewing those recommendations before we take action. So it's everywhere in cybersecurity, both offense and defense, as well as all the systems we have to protect. And I would say if there's one area that I encourage, no matter what, whether it's cybersecurity, it's any other industry, no matter what sort of industry you're planning on going into in the future, understanding at least the capabilities and limitations of AI is going to put you ahead, because it's hard to think of too many industries that will not be incorporating it. So it's definitely it's kind of, I talk about that the job that I do today did not exist 5 years ago. The job you're going to be doing in 5 years doesn't exist today. So I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what that job's going to be. So what you need to do is prepare yourself for that. Always, I'm a big proponent of what I say. A fundamental requirement that I look for when I'm looking for a new hire is what I term an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. It's like I know what I'm doing tomorrow is going to be different than what I do today's. Do you have that drive and desire to continually learn and grow and change and adapt? Because the pace of that change is going to require quick adaptation. And if you're one of those, you're going to do quite well in the future. Uh, but yeah, I was well, the job I do today didn't exist 5 years ago. The job I did 5 years ago didn't exist 10 years ago, and I think there's going to be fundamental disruption of across a lot of industries over the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much for that information. Thank you for your insights. You've been very knowledgeable. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. And we'll move on to Elaine and her closing this workshop.
So we
Okay.
have we do have a question. As someone who teaches in a master's program, do you have any recommendations on what to look for in a master's in cyber AI program? Is there still an advantage to pursuing a master's over other paths in the cyber field?
Right. And yeah, and that's actually a great question. And when we are talking about cybersecurity master's program, first of all, I'd be looking at above just the accreditation, what kind of external validation they have as well. Um, for instance, DHS and so Department of Homeland Security, National Security Administration, and those have their certifications on some of the master's programs too, based upon the curriculum and that. So you can look at that. The other thing is looking at what others in the field, does that take a real good look at the curriculum and see if that aligns with where you want to go in cybersecurity, because they're not all the same, right? For instance, when I did my master's in cyber, the focus was on intelligence, right? So if that's what you're wanting to get into, they have different concentrations a lot of times, whether it's intelligence, digital forensics, AI security, uh, these different things. Now, what I tell, and I'm sure that there's many different ways to look at this, but what I tell most people, unless you're in a really rare situation, if you have an undergraduate degree already in cybersecurity, do not go in debt to get your master's. Go join a company, a respected company, and they will pay your tuition. They will give you tuition assistance to pursue your master's on their dime. Sure, you have to do it while working a full-time job, but that's a good way to avoid that. And it also that way, I think a lot of students get more out of their masters at that point because they have some real world experience they're bringing into the program. So that's also an avenue I would seriously consider if I was in that position, right? I know it was. I remember at MasterCard, I was doing this presentation. It was to the MasterCard staff. It was based on the findings from my doctoral dissertation, which was on security automation. And at the beginning, on one slide, I just had this number that was put up there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something like, 93,742. Just this number. Nothing else. All right. And at the end, I asked people, did they realize what that number was? And none of them did. That was how much MasterCard had paid for me to get my doctorate. Not how much I paid, how much they paid, right? So, and same thing with masters. If you can get into the field, get some hands on, get a company that will pay for that, that's great. Now, in some situations, it may be better to go ahead and, that's kind of a personal decision on where you're at to go ahead and complete that master's first. Uh, but it's a lot of times getting into cybersecurity, you can get that you can get in there with your entry level positions or whatever using your bachelor's and then grow from there. Maybe even determine where in cybersecurity you want to specialize so that you can figure out which program best aligns with that. Right?
That's
Like we do
great.
have another question. If there's any certain programs you recommend learning.
By programs, are we talking? I guess I need clarification on what we're.
I meant like just like different applications or different programs specifically that you recommend like having like a good understanding.
Oh, okay. So, and a lot of that's going to depend upon your future focus or what you want to focus in. Um, if you're undecided, then it's typically good to have a basic background in the major tools that might be used, say in security, like vulnerability scanning, security incident event management systems, and those sort of components, um, how they fit together. If you know where you want to specialize in, so like if say you're going to go specialize in digital forensics, then you would look at the tool set specifically around that. But I think in general, it's yes, have an understanding of what security incident event management, and some of them there's open source ones you can get to play around and learn the capabilities there. Firewalls, same thing there. So any of those security tools or programs, understand how they function, what they're, you know, hands-on with them is great. And that's why I recommend like the hackathons, because if you go to a hackathon, you're typically getting hands-on experience using those tools.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wendt. It looks like we have come to the end here. We have one more question. As someone with experience in both, uh, what are your favorite parts of software development versus cybersecurity?
Oh my. Yeah, that's a well, for me, software development's always been kind of I guess say my first love in the industry, right? Um, and it's the creative side of that, developing something brand new, something, that I'm creating on my own. I get instant feedback, right? Does it work or not? That is one of the best things about software development is that when I'm done, I know that it works or not. Cybersecurity, you don't know that. You do all this planning, you put all these defenses in place, and you never know if it works. You only know if that extreme situation where it doesn't and someone just got into your system. So that the creativity and knowing that, yeah, what I develop works. And I still now most of the software development I do today is around machine learning and that. But I still do that. And for instance, when I first really started getting into AI, I was approaching it from a cybersecurity perspective. So I had my own lab set up where I would develop machine learning applications, but then develop poisoning attacks on those to try to see how they respond. Uh, so I think from the it, they definitely exercise very different perspectives. And I think from the cybersecurity, one thing that I enjoyed so much about it is that it changes constantly, right? It's ever evolving, and no day is the same, right? It's you may come in with a great plan of what you're going to do today. Someone's going to disrupt it, right? In cybersecurity. So it's I like bringing them both together, and there are, for those that have an interest in like software development, there's also a lot of uses for um, development and scripting and that to automate cybersecurity. But also a big part of it is when we talk about secure software development lifecycle, having those application security professionals involved in the software development to ensure that best practices and that from a security standpoint are there. So there are ways if you're like me and you like them both that you can bring them both together. Um, yeah, it's that's one thing I missed about being a software developer was that at the end of the day back then I always knew what I did whether it worked or didn't. Cybersecurity, we never know. All we know is we didn't make the front page today, and that's a good thing.
Thank you very much. Letitia?
Yes, thank you very much for that information. Now, guys, I'm going to share the exit survey. If you guys could please complete it. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Dr. Wendt.
Sure. And I'll just tell any of you on here too, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I post out there quite a bit and also about any opportunities I see that might come up.
It's been a pleasure having you, and this has been really informative. Thank you to our guests that visited with us. Thank you, Dr. Wendt and Letitia, for running it.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a good day.